Okay, I apologize. Oh, I apologize for the confusion last Friday. I, I actually posted it on the Blackboard. I think last Monday, but I did not actually send you the reminder. So that's why some people just log into the class link, but uh, the class was not there. Um, so before I start the class, let me actually talk about something else. Um, the first thing is the test one. Um, so if you take a look at um, the Blackboard announcement, I just actually gave you the details about test one. So test one is scheduled on today. So just remember that one. Um, so since it's an online class, it's remote. So we're not gonna have like an in-class test. So the test will be online, and the test will be available from 12:30 or actually 12 p.m. to midnight today. So you have 12 hours windows to do the test, to start the test. I'm sorry. So, but the actual test is gonna last for 2 hours. So, here's the thing. So you can start anytime between 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. Um, so 12 p.m. to actually midnight. So you have 12 hours. You can start anytime between that time period. However, once you start the test, once you start to do the first problem, now you have to finish the test within 2 hours. So the test, so the clock is going to be ticking once you start the test. But you can choose the right time to start your test. So you can start at the 1, then you have to finish it at the 3. So if you start at the 4, then you have to finish at 6. So it's just like a 2 hours, 2 hours window. So make sure you understand how the test is set. So um, so the so if you have any, the test, mostly the test are going to be like the multiple choices, and I think the multiple choice is the one. So, but some of the multiple choice problem requires a little bit time to work on, because you may actually need to read some piece of code and ask you what is the output for these. So even though it's a multiple choice, you still need to think. Still need to actually do a little bit, you know, read the code and understand the code and write the output. Also, the programming lab 2 has been posted on Zybooks. So so the lab contains coding problems in chapter 5. Um, so um, yeah, the third announcement was about the class on last Friday, but you know. Okay, let me check the message. Okay, I don't see any message here. So, do you have any questions about the test or the lab?
I do have a comment on the programming lab too. So recently when I checked Zybooks, it showed that the labs were hidden, so I couldn't access
Oh,
them.
good question. Yeah, good point. So let me check. So I can make it available. So that's not a problem. Um, let's
I
see.
can access all the required ones.
Okay, let me see the lab. Um, okay, so 11. 5.11. That's the, okay, so this is not the problem. What's next? Which one is not visible? 5.
I'm checking right now.
Yeah, 5.13. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think so. 5.13 is not visible. 14, okay. Looks like none of these are visible. Okay, yeah, I apologize. I forgot to set it up. Yeah, I think it's there now. So okay, so any other questions? Let's see. So I think I just checked the discussion forum. I see some other questions. I think I reply the questions you have on the discussion forum. First, the first actually thread was created by group 2. So about the first question is, what are the main differences between enhanced for loops and the regular for loops? Yeah, unfortunately, I did not emphasize the enhanced for loop. So, so the enhanced for loop, regular for loop has been used for many years, but the enhanced for loop actually started in the Java version 5.0. So it's just basically a kind of shortcut. They basically perform the same um, functionality. So I actually posted examples, you know, and you have some idea what's the difference in terms of syntax. But these two actually for loop basically perform the same thing. So in the regular loop, you basically when you do the regular loop for an array, so you basically do the loop on index. So you can actually the for loop, the count, the I basically count the index. So for example, the traditional for loop actually start from I equals 0 and then all the way to the length of the array. So then that means you're going to start from I equals 0 all the way to the last index in the array. So you basically do this by increment the index. So when you actually print, in this particular example, you want to print the array. So suppose array is just oh, I'm sorry, it should be my array. So that's let me see, edit. Yeah, this should be my array. But this is actually the array, the name of the array. So you basically when you do the actually for loop for the index, then you print each of the array element by showing the array and its index. Okay, now the enhanced for loop, it just actually count the element itself. So the index is actually hidden. You don't actually explicitly see the index. So for example, you basically do the actual loop for the array itself, array name itself. So for example, like so the array is actually my array is a string, right? So my array is a string. So you basically print out the array element. But here, my array is a string. So now you're going to say, okay, I'm going to do the loop for my array. And I'm going to loop with each of the element in the array. So I don't actually use the index. And each element is an array element. You basically do the array, do the loop with like array, my array I. So you basically not the loop on the index, loop on each of the array element. So that's why it's actually string. The element is a string because it's each of the element inside the array. So then, so you actually print out the element instead of print out the my array index. You don't actually do the loop for the index. You do the loop for the array element. So basically it performs the same thing, but you seems to actually ignore the array index. So you don't use the index. Okay. The second question says, can we go over challenging activity 5.9.1? Yes, I think that's a good example because it just talk about the two-dimensional array. So so challenge activity 5.9.1. So you basically just find a two-dimensional array maximum element and a minimum element. Okay, find the maximum value and the minimum value in mile tracker. Okay, in miles tracker, and assign the maximum value to the max mile, minimum values to the min mile. Okay, so this is actually the Java code that they posted on the Zybook, and you are asked to fill in your own code over here. So here you have the class called arrays key value, and then here's the main method. Okay, so scanner. Okay, it's a scanner object, and then you define two constant values. It's called basically use the final syntax. So one is number of rows, number of columns. Okay, so number of row and the number of columns are both 2. So number of basically when you declare a two-dimensional array, you can interpret the two-dimensional array as this. Okay, so let me actually give you some interpretation here. So when you declare a two-dimensional array, say int, that's a syntax, my array, say a new, and then int. So the first one is the index, the first index, let's say 3. The second is the second index. Okay, now you can actually interpret the two-dimensional array just like a matrix or a table. Okay, now the first index you can actually interpret like a raw index. Okay, the second one is column. Okay, so now you can organize the index value like this. So the index going to be element going to be right like my array, like 0 0. That's the first one, which basically means it's a raw number 0 and a column number 0. So the index going to be this two-dimensional array going to be organized like this. So here's the raw number, and here's a column. So you have a raw number 0, raw number 1, raw number 2, because you have 3 rows, total of 3 rows. So 0, 1, 2. Now you have a column, so you have 4 columns. So you have a column 0, column 1, column 2, and a column 3. So the index of the last element is always 1 short than the number of columns. So if the number of columns 4, the last index is 3. So you can always interpret the two-dimensional array as a matrix. So this element, it's a my array 0, 0. That's the first element. And then this is 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3. And the 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3. And 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2, and 2, 3. So that this each represent the element of the array. Okay, so you can always interpret two-dimensional array as a matrix. And the first one you can interpret as a row. The second one is a column. Okay, now Java also allows us to create a three-dimensional array. Now the three-dimensional array, if try to understand the three-dimensional array, you can think about an object in a space. Okay, so then when you talk about three-dimensional array, so you can think about this. Okay, so if there's a three-dimensional array, your array equals new int 3, 4, 5. Okay, so you can interpret this three-dimensional array as an object in a space. Okay, now this is the x-axis, y-axis, and the z-axis. So x, y, z. Now you have three elements in the x direction, so you can say 1, 2, 3, right? And y has 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the z has 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So then you can interpret anything okay. Now I need to erase that one. Okay. So any object, any array element like your array, like a 0, 0, 0. This is actually this element, right? It's in the orange. Now, what about your array? Like a 1, 1, 1, 2, 3. How about this? So that means the value for the x is 1, right? So that means this is x is 1. The value for the y is 2. So this is here. So basically you're talking about x is 1, y is 2, and z is 3. So you're going to say z is 3, that you're going to go up. One, two, three. So you're talking about element in a space like this one. So you have the coordinate 1, 2, and 3 over here. Okay. So this is actually you're talking about object in the three-dimensional. Now Java also supports four-dimensional array and multiple dimensional array. Now in that case, if it's four-dimensional array, I don't know how to do this, but you can use your own imagination, But one-dimensional, two-dimensional, and three-dimensional, so you can always use the space. One-dimensional means just one line. Two-dimensional you means a plane, and three-dimensional is a space. So you can interpret this. So the two-dimensional array is more like a matrix. So now once you actually understand this, now it's relatively easier to understand the problem here. So the first part, so you define max miles, min miles. So these eventually gonna store the maximal mile tracker, and the minim miles gonna store the minim mile tracker. So now, so the first one, you're gonna actually import the value. Okay. Now, how you're gonna import the value? You're gonna actually, because it's a two-dimensional array, so you can import the value using the in nested for loop. So you have a two for loop. The first for loop is for the row. The second for loop is for the column. Okay. So because the index I is for the first index, index j is for the second index, which is for the column. Okay. Now this is basically, now if you go back to this again, let me see. If you go back to this again, so let me both show the Microsoft Word document and as well as the also the code. So here for this for loop, you can basically interpret like this. So here mile tracker is two-dimensional array. Now it's a 2 by 2, so that means there are two rows, right? Row number 0, row number 1, column number 0, column number 1, right? So the total of 4 elements. Okay, so this is the first one, 1. Now, when you do the loop for I, so I basically loop on row and j loop on column. Okay, so in this particular case, how you're gonna actually do the import? So that means the for loop on the outside for loop, that's the for loop for I. So that means for each I, like I equals 0, so then you're going to do the loop for j. Okay, so basically the order is for I equals 0, then you do the loop for j. J is actually from 0 all the way to 1 because there are two elements. Okay, so that means the import are going to be like the first, the first actually scan, the first element to the scan actually, the scanner going to read, going to send it to mile tracker 000. It's a mile tracker 00. Okay, because for I equals 0, and then you j equals 0. Now, once you complete the j equals 0, then you're going to do the j equal 1, right? Because once I equals 0, then you're going to complete a for loop for the j. So then you're going to, next one, you're going to be j equals 1. Sorry, not 0. So then you're going to have a 0 and a 1. Okay. Now, so that's pretty much all for the j loop, because there are only actually two elements, two column elements, 0 and a 1. So once you're done, then you go out to the outer loop. So then I increment from 0 to 1. And then you're going to actually do the loop for the j again. So when I equals 1, you're going to do the loop j again. So then you're going to have a j equals 0. So next one, your import value going to be 1, 0. And then j equals 1. So the order is like this. So the first actually element in the scanner going to read the first element is just scanner gonna import, scanner gonna read will be assigned to my tracker 00, and the second one gonna be assigned to my tracker 01, and the third one gonna be assigned to the my tracker 10 and my tracker 11. So you always gonna start the outer loop first. Okay, so the outer loop actually, so that's why the raw actually changes very slowly, and for each value of raw number, the column number gonna actually change very quickly. Okay, so for each I, you're gonna do the loop for j. Each I, you're gonna do the loop for j. Okay, so this is actually the one. Now, so in terms of the code, now you can find out that so you can actually, you need to realize this, you know, when you actually do the mile tracker dot length. So mile tracker dot length is gonna give you the raw total of the length of the raw. Okay, and then for each value of raw, mile tracker, you know, then you have I, and then so that basically, so this, okay, now, so that's something you need to actually realize, that the mile tracker dot length, this will give you the raw length of raw. So that means you're gonna have 1, 2. So that's the length. Okay. Now, my tracker zero dot length. This is gonna give you one raw number equals 0. That's the length. Okay. So 1, 2. So that means the length is 2. So that's basically, they gave you the mile tracker 0 dot length, and this is actually the mile tracker 1 dot length. So this is actually the mile tracker 1 dot length. So even though mile tracker 0 dot length, mile tracker 1 dot length, both gonna give you 2, right? Because both actually, first raw number 0 has 2 elements, raw number 1 has 2 elements, because they are the same length. So this, both of these gonna give you the same number. Okay. So but this is what they actually use. Okay. Now you can actually replace this with the num rows and then run num columns. So you can replace this with num row, which is also 2, and this one replaced with num columns. So that's also okay. So let me actually do this. So you're gonna do the for loop, and also use the nested for loop. Okay. Now you want to actually find the maximum of these 4 elements, right? What's the maximum miles? So basically what you're going to do is, you first need to assign the initial value for mile, maximum mile. So initial value, what are you going to assign? So you want to find the maximum of these 4 elements. So let me see. I can do this. I can assign mile tracker C. I can assign the first element. Okay. And also the minimum miles also assigned to I can assign maximum and the minimum both to this. Okay. So this value is going to be assigned to the min miles and the maximum miles, the max miles and the min miles. Okay. And then we're going to do the loop. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. Let me see. Here's what I'm going to do. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, okay, so I'm going to do the for loop for I and for j. So then I compare if mile tracker I j. So if this value compare with the current value, which is stored in the max mile, okay, so then the max mile gonna eventually get this I chuck ij. Now tell me in which circumstance I need to assign mile tracker ij to max mile. So initial max mile is max mile tracker 00. Now I started the loop for I and for j. So I compared my tracker ij with max the value stored in max miles. Now, in which circumstance I need to actually, assign the mile tracker ij to mile max mile? So let me actually show this again, because this is very important. So I have a mile tracker. Okay. So this is the first 00 and the 01 and the 10 and the 11. So I start to do the loop. First the loop is this, the second is this, third is this. Now max mile was initially assigned this, right? My tracker, my tracker 00. Now, and then I start the loop. The first one, I gotta compare my tracker 00 with my max mile. So basically they're the same value, right? The first one, I gotta do the loop. When I equals 0, j equals 0, then it's the same value. So it really doesn't matter, it's the same value. Now, the second one, when I equals 0, j equals 1. So when my tracker 01 compare with max mile, in which circumstance I'm going to replace this my tracker 00 with this one, with 101. Do I hear any answer for this? The only case that I'm going to replace the max miles with the my tracker 0 ij is when my tracker ij is greater than or equal to mile max mile, right? If the mile tracker ij is larger or equal to the max mile, and then I replace the max mile with my tracker ij. Does it make sense? Because eventually, after the whole loop, this one, I just compare with my tracker 00 with max mile. Now, if my tracker 00 is greater than or equal to my max mile, I replace max mile with this one. Now, if this one is bigger than my max mile, and then I replace my max mile with this one, right? And if this one's bigger, I replace max mile with my tracker 10. And if this one's bigger, and then replace my max mile with this one, right? With the my tracker ij. So every time when my tracker ij is greater than or equal to my max mile, then I replace the max mile with the current my tracker value. So eventually, once you complete the whole loop, the nested loop, the max mile gonna contains the largest value, right? Does it make sense?
Somewhat.
Okay. That's good. So this is the first one. And then what about the minimum? The minimile. So the minimile is supposed to contains the minimile is supposed to contains the minimum value in this, right? So I'm gonna replace, I just copy paste the same code. Now, except when the minimize, my tracks ij should be actually assigned to the minimize when the condition like this. So my track value is less than or equal to minimize, and then I replace the minimize value with my tracker ij. Okay, and then I close the for loop. Does it make sense? Okay, I think that's pretty much what we should do. And now let's run this. But eventually, the minimize equals min miles, max mile equals max miles. So let's just run this. Cannot find. Okay. Let's see. What is the compile error says? Array key value Java 21. Max mile equals mile tracker 0, 0. Oh, that's always that's a typical problem. Do you know what's the problem here? I think I just put the mile tracker. It should be miles tracker. Okay. Did I miss this in any other place? Miles track, miles track, miles track, miles track, miles track. Okay. If you got a compile error, don't be panic, because that's typical. You know, when you actually do the coding, it's unlikely that you are not going to experience any problem. Okay, so that's good. So now, so the tester was import -10, 20, 30, 40. So minimi equals minus 10, that's the minimum value. And max mile equals 40, that's the max mile, right? So you basically do the loop, the whole loop, and compare each of the value miles tracker ij with the value stored in max miles and min miles. And if the mile tracker ij is greater than max mile, then replace the max mile with the current mile tracker value, miles tracker value. If the miles tracker is smaller than the min mile, I replace with the current value in the min miles. So that's what I'm gonna do, the condition. Okay. So any questions with this? Okay. Now let's actually go back to the topics we just talked about. Okay. So let's continue with the method. Okay. So I think we actually started the problem with the take-home pay calculator. That was the actually that was last Monday, because we didn't have class on Friday. So so when you actually do at the take-home pay calculator, it's desirable to define a method, because then every people want to calculate his or her own take-home pay, then he or she can actually call the method. So that's basically, so the Java methods, or many extra method for any extra compute language, is to save your time, reuse the code. Okay. So so let's say the example say create a Java method to call the take-home income that takes the annual gross salary amount as double value. Okay. If it then estimates how much you bring home bi-weekly after tax and deductions from your salary. Okay. Here's the instruction. Okay. So prompt the user to enter the annual salary amount as a decimal number, such as 67500.50, and calculate the bi-weekly gross income. And there are 52 weeks per week, per year. So let's actually do this. Okay, let me actually put this one here. Okay, and then let's go to the repel .it. That's the one I use to calculate the. Okay, let's check the repel. Okay, I try to squeeze both actually screen in the same, both window in the same screen. Okay. So let's see. Take home. Okay, bi-weekly income. That's the. Okay. Now let's see. First one, prompt to actually enter the user enter the annual salary. So I use the let me actually enlarge this coding part. And so let's say we're gonna create a a class. Now, this is actually the problem with repel .it. So normally when you create a Java code by default, they're gonna always use the class main. So you can actually change the class main to something else. Let's actually do this. So I can change the actually say take home pay, right? I can name my class there of this. So I change the class name from main to take home pay. Now, however, in Java, if you use the class name called take home pay, now you have to make sure the file name should be take home.java. You have to match the file name and the class name. So, but here the file name is main.java, so you need to change the main.java to take home pay.java. So then you can use the command. It's like mostly the command used in the Microsoft actually Microsoft DOS actually prompt. So you can use the command line called move. This is just like the shell command used in Linux or Unix. Okay, so you can use the command called move v, which basically stands for move. You can move the main.java to another name, take home .java. Okay. You can always use this to change the name of this file. So if I hit enter, watch over here. Watch over here. So the name gonna be changed. Okay. So this name gonna be changed to take home pay, and the class names also take home pay. So that makes sense. Okay. And then in the main method, here's the main method. Okay. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna define my method. The method I'm gonna define is called take home income. Okay, I use slightly different, not pay, but take home income. Okay, so the take home income is a method. So this method is gonna take the annual salary. Okay, so typically when you actually bargain with your company, they always give you the annual salary. But when you actually get the pay, it's based on bi-weekly. Okay, or some company give you actually monthly pay, but many companies like Fitchburg State, they give you bi-weekly pay. Now, how are you going to actually convert your monthly annual salary into a bi-weekly pay? Okay, now here's you're going to actually do. So based on the instruction, you're going to first calculate something called bi-weekly gross income. Okay, so bi-weekly gross income is just the annual salary divided by 26, because for the whole year it's a 52 weeks, right? 1 year has 52 weeks. So if you actually paid bi-weekly, if you paid weekly, so the annual salary is going to be divided by 52, right? But if you pay bi-weekly, so that means you're going to pay every other week. So the bi-weekly actually gross income going to be the annual salary divided by 26. Does that make sense? Annual salary divided by 26. But that's a gross bi-weekly income or bi-weekly gross income, because you haven't actually minus any actually deduction yet, because Uncle Sam gonna take some of the money away because they're gonna charge you the federal tax. Okay, and then you're gonna actually take another portion of the money away to save, as the retirement. Okay, no one gonna pay you the retirement except by yourself. So when you actually get the income, so it's not like you will get all the money. So you have to actually subtract some of the cost. One of the single big cost is the federal tax. Okay, so you have to subtract the federal tax, and then you have to subtract the retirement money. So you have to save somewhere your retirement money, like a 401k or something like this. And then you're also going to actually subtract the social security tax, federal income tax, plus and also social security tax. And then you also need to subtract the insurance pay, because if you work in the company and you have to pay the medical insurance or something like this. So in case you're sick, then you don't have to pay everything out of your pocket. So the insurance company going to pay for you. So this is actually the deductions. Okay. So let's go back. Okay. So here your gross income is here, and then so you have actually income, the gross income. Okay, and then calculate the biweekly gross income, which is actually, something your annual income divided by 26, which is this is the biweekly gross income. And then you have to deduct 6.2% social security tax from your biweekly income. Okay, subtract 10% retirement money and deduct 20% federal tax from remaining income. Okay, and subtract $195 medical insurance. Every 2 weeks you have to pay $195 medical insurance, and then that's the net biweekly income. So that's the money you will actually receive. That's the paycheck you will see. Okay, so let's see. So for each of this, you're gonna see here. So this is a biweekly gross income, which is annual salary divided by 26. And then this is the income after the social security tax. So your biweekly gross income, okay, minus your biweekly gross income times 6.2%. Okay, so that's, you subtracted this part, and that's your income after the social security tax. And then after SS, you need to subtract the retirement, which is actually 10% of this after SS. So after SS times 10 divided by 100, that's 10%. And then you subtract your after SS subtracted this. So that's the after retirement. Okay. And then after federal tax, federal tax is basically after you are after actual retirement money, okay, minus the 20%, which is 0.20, or 20 divided by 100. Either way, it's okay. I use 0.20 times the after retirement. So that's the amount of federal tax you need to pay. And then this is the after tax income, because you have to, after retirement money, subtract the 20% off. And then you got this. And then your biweekly income, net income, is after federal tax income minus 195. That's the insurance. Okay. And then that's the final amount. So then you're going to return the biweekly net. as the returned value for your method. Okay, so this is actually the definition for your take-home income method. Okay, now how you can actually calculate for each person? So then you need to actually use a scanner to import the gross annual income. Okay, so then you're going to print to say system out, please enter gross annual income. Okay, so the gross annual income equals my scan. Okay, it's a my scan dot next double. So that's the next actually import the value. That's your annual income. And then your gross annual income will be actually, then you're going to call the method take home income. This is the method you define here, the take home income method. Okay, the take home income method. Now the argument here is the gross annual income. So when you actually call take home income parenthesis gross annual income, you actually going to actually call the take home income method and replace the annual salary, the parameter with the argument gross annual income. So the annual salary will be replaced with gross annual income. And then you do the calculation. And once you actually finish the calculation, you return biweekly net. So the return value will be assigned to biweekly net income in the main method. So then you can actually calculate the biweekly net income. So let's actually compile this to see how it works. Okay, now when you actually try to compile it, now here's, I think this is a bug for the repo.it. Once I change the name, I cannot directly call the run. I have to use the command line compiler. That's a Java C. Have you ever used the Java C to compile the Java code?
No.
No? Okay. Java C it's actually command line compiler. So you can use the Java C, then type the take home pay .java. So this is actually the take home pay.java. So you hit the enter, and this is going to do the compiling. Oh, it gave me error message. Okay, take home pay.java 26. Let's see. Take home income. So error cannot find the biweekly gross annual income. Let's see. 26 gross annual income. Oh, variable biweekly net income. Oh, it's not defined. So I need to define double biweekly net income. Okay. Okay, let's try again. Okay, no compile error. Now, here, if you use repel.it, you can actually use the Java C. If you actually install the Oracle like a NetBean for the Java compiler, you can also actually run the Java C. Okay, Java C is a command line, so you just go to the page and then you can. So then to run this code, you can say Java space take home pay. Okay, that's it. Just the name of the file, and hit the enter. Okay, so now when you hit the enter, you're gonna actually start the execution. You're gonna start from the main program, and the first statement you're gonna print out is please enter the gross annual salary, and then you're gonna actually, in my scan, you just type, let's see, what's a gross salary income? Let's say $90,000. Okay, dot 00. Okay. So this $90,000 will be assigned to the gross annual income, right? After you actually hit the enter. And then the $90,000 will be assigned to the gross annual income, and this will be $90,000. And then when you take home income, this $90,000 will be assigned, will be passed to annual salary. Okay, so let's see what happens. So your biweekly net income is 2,142.78. Okay, so if your annual income is $90,000, then your biweekly net income is only 2,142 after all this deduction. After actually deduct the Social Security, let me see, what's the first one you deduct? Yeah, after a Social Security, and then 10% retirement, and 20% federal tax, and then 195 insurance payment. So that's the paycheck you will receive. Now let's try again. Oh, I don't have to compile. Sorry, I just need to run directly. Okay, now let's see. Someone with the annual income like now this one, it's just actually a Java code, and they always assume that the federal tax is 20%. Now, which is not true, right? But that's just a simplified version of tax, because the actual federal taxes depend on your income. If your income is actually lower, the federal tax rate is smaller, because you're not going to have the same actually percentage, and also there's some other deduction, like if you purchase a house, and then your interest actually going to also give you a deduction, so something like this. But this is just actually a very simplified version. Let's say your annual salary is 120,000. Now what's your okay, your biweekly net income is 2,900, 2,922. Okay, so that's basically it. Okay, so this is actually, the way that you can actually define a class. Then you can define a method. So if you actually try to calculate the income, you can actually just actually import your income, annual gross income, and then you can calculate how much paycheck you will receive after all these tax deduction, retirement, insurance, lots of actually all these deductions. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so let's actually continue with the with this actually topics. So when you actually define a Java method, you can pass the the argument, and you can actually pass the argument. So the method may actually pass the argument like a integer or floating point numbers like a double. And also Java allows you to pass the parameter as array. Okay. Now this is actually a very interesting thing. So when you call a method, define a method, you can pass the integer, but you can also pass array. But when you pass the array, the way that the array pass is different. The array going to pass as a reference. Okay. Now what's the difference between array and just integer? Normally we call the primitive type, but array is actually passed as a reference. So that means the array going to be passed as reference. So that means that it's not really past each individual element of the array. It's just past. You treat the array as an object. So then you're going to you pass the point. Okay. So array is passed to a method by passing the reference to the array. The array reference is copied to the method's parameter. So a method can modify the elements of an array argument. So now what's this difference you're going to make? Okay, let's check the challenge activity 6.4.1. Let's see. Challenge activity 6.1. Okay. Now, in this particular example, let's see. Let's see. We define a method called print score vals. Okay. The print score val gonna actually use the parameter array as a parameter. Score val is an array. Okay. So now this is the main method. Okay. So we actually use a scanner, and we also use the final int number of scores. That's the basically the size of the array. So then you're going to say int quiz score, new int num score. That's 3. Okay. Num score is a 3. So then you can actually do the for loop, I from all the way to the length of the quiz. Okay. So each quiz value going to be going to read from the scanner. Okay. So then once you complete the read, so now you have a quiz scores 0, quiz score 1, quiz score 2, right? You have actually 3 values. And then you actually pass this quiz score, which is actually array. Okay, the quiz score is an array. Now pass this quiz score, you're going to print. Okay, so now what's the output? Let's see. Let's take a look at this example. So in this particular case, so the input is 0, 10, 2. So the quiz score is, the code is like this. So now what's the output? Okay, so your input, so the quiz score 0 going to be 0, quiz score 1 going to be 10, quiz score 2 going to be 2. So what's the output? So now you take a look at the print score val, pass the quiz score, and then you're going to say for I equals 0 all the way to the length of the score val, which is 3. So system. So what's the output? So you're going to be 0, 10, right? Let's check. Okay. Now, then the next one. So you can actually continue. So if the score size is 5, and then you're gonna actually do. So now you define a method called find scores. Okay. Now the find score gonna actually return a value, integer value. So pass the actually score val as the array. So then, so when you actually do this, so when you actually import the quiz score, so you have 5 values. What's the output? What's the output? So find the score, pass the quiz score. So you pass these values. Okay. But you should keep that in mind. So when you actually deal with array, so the array is going to be dealt with differently. So when you copy a value, so when you call a method, you define a method, say public, static, a void, function, and you pass the int x, and then this is actually how you're going to define the function. And then in the main method, when you call the function, so when you say x equals 3, and then you call the function, you basically in the function, when you actually declare a variable x, okay, and the x value is 3. When you call the function, when you actually call the function, now inside the function, so you're going to actually have, for this x, you're going to allocate a variable called x, which is not the same as this x, okay? So you can actually use y, even it doesn't matter, because when x is called, x is going to be, the value of x is going to be passed to the parameter y, and this is a y. And then when the value is x, x actually passed to the y, and then the 3 will be copied to y, okay? The value 3 will be copied to y, okay? So then the y has a value 3. However, when you actually pass the when you pass the array, so let's say public, static, void, function, then you can say int y. Now this y is actually passed as an array, and then you're going to say I call the function and I call x. Now x is actually defined as an array, right? Array of 3 elements. So in that case, in the main function, x is defined as array. X has 3 elements. 1, 2, 3. That's x0. That's x1. That's x2. Now, when you actually declare the function has passed the array y. So then in here, you're going to have declared y as array, okay? Y as array, okay? When you actually pass this x to y, so you basically so pass the, so x is, so you basically ask the y to point to the same. So x is actually the array variable, which is pointed to the object, okay? That's stored array elements. So x actually is array variable pointed to the object, which is actually contains the array x0, x1, x2. Now, when you actually pass the value of x to y, when you call the function, you pass the actually value of argument of x to y. You actually pass the reference to y. So you basically ask the y to point to the same elements. So you are not creating a new element. So that's why when you change the value of y, you also change the value of x. So if y inside the function call, so y0 is 2, so that means the value of 2 assigned to y0. Now in this case, y0 is actually 0.2 to that one. So that means y0 equals 2 basically means I change the value of 1 to 2 here. And then when you come back, the value of x has been changed as well. Okay, so that's the major difference. You just need to realize. So we're going to talk about the pass by reference on Friday. So this is very important. Once you actually finish this one, then we're going to jump to the next chapter, the class. But when you actually, the pass by reference, is really different from pass by value. Okay, so that's something we're going to talk about. That's why we're going to see some strange things happening when you actually put an array as an argument in the function call. So it's not the same as pass by value, which is when you pass the integer value or floating point value. Now, when you pass the array value, then you're not going to create a new array and copy each of the individual value to the other one. So that's something we're going to actually talk about again. So on Friday, we're going to talk the function method again, but we're going to talk about the pass by reference. So we're going to actually work on another example, just give you the illustration on what does it mean by pass by reference. Okay, I think that's pretty much all for today. And don't forget that we have a test, from 12 p.m. just noon to the midnight. Okay, so you have 12-hour windows to start your test. But when you start the test, you have 2 hours to complete the test. So just read.
So the test opens up at 12 today?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So just read the announcement very carefully. So you have a flexibility. You don't have to start at 12. You can start at 2. You can start at 4. But but once you start, you only have 2 hours to finish. Okay.
Have a good one.
Okay. Good luck.
Is the test going to be under assignments?
Yes, it's under assignment. In the Blackboard
All right,
assignment. Yes.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
Professor.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day.